tough day in New York City and for law enforcement across the country. They are a brother and a sisterhood. The police department here is laying to rest Officer Didarul Islam. He was one of 4 people shot and killed during Monday's mass shooting in a Manhattan high-rise. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Right now, in this traditional Muslim ceremony, the men who are in mourning are attending the viewing at a New York City mosque. Women viewed last hour. A prayer service is set to begin at noon. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, Republican mayoral nominee Curtis Sliwa, and Democrat nominee Zohran Mamdani are all set to attend. Mamdani is now trying to walk back his stance on defunding the police and all of the things that he has said about them that are just such harsh rhetoric. You know, the kind that has been happening over the past 4 years under Biden. Here he is in 2021. And then what he said yesterday. Take a look.
When we talk about defund the NYPD, the entirety of the push is defund the NYPD and refund all of these different social services and things that actually create safety.
I am not defunding the police. I am not running to defund the police.
Well, the Democrat socialist / communist, as I call him, is not backing away from his push to disband a very critical NYPD elite task force, the same special force that responded to Monday's shooting. He also called to end cash bail, decarcerate offenders, just let them go, end cooperation with Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement, eliminate police overtime. So when they're out there saving lives and fighting crime, if they run over a little bit, it'll be on them. He's not going to pay you. And repeal all mandatory minimum prison sentences. Politico with this headline: Zohran Mamdani's impending High Wire Act managing the NYPD. National correspondent Brian Yennis is in New York City. Brian.
Harris, Zohran Mamdani, while campaigning and then becoming a New York Assembly member, said he wanted to defund the NYPD in 2020 and 2021. It wasn't until June last month that he first said he would not defund the NYPD, and throughout his campaign has promoted reallocating its resources and stripping the NYPD of responsibilities to a new Department of Community Safety. Yet yesterday he insisted, he's been very clear, that he values the NYPD.
Over the course of this race, I've been very clear about my view of public safety and the critical role that police have in creating that. The vision that we've put forward in this campaign, despite what others may say, is not to defund the police.
Mamdani did not explicitly say he regretted any of his numerous 2020 social media posts in which he calls for the NYPD to be defunded, nor did he apologize for calling the NYPD racist, wicked, corrupt, and even mocked a crying police officer writing "Nature is healing" in response to someone laughing that they had just seen a cop crying in their car. Mamdani says this was all out of anger.
My statements in 2020 were ones made amidst a frustration that many New Yorkers held at the murder of George Floyd and the inability to deliver on what Eric Adams, of all people, described as the right for all of us to be able to enjoy safety and justice, that we need not choose between the two.
Just 7 months ago, Mamdani called for the Strategic Response Group, a highly trained NYPD unit that responded to Monday's shooting, to be dismantled. Yesterday, Mamdani said he still opposes the SRG unit, saying the group is used in a way that violates the civil rights of protesters. New York Republican Congresswoman Elise Stefanik says this is who Mamdani really is.
It is the platform which he has run on in the mayoral primary. He ran on defunding the police. This was a policy he embraced. Now he wants to run away from this. New Yorkers are smart. They see through this.
Mamdani met with the family of murdered Officer Didarul Islam yesterday. He said it was his first stop after returning from vacation in Uganda. Harris, as you said, he is attending today's funeral at the invitation of the family. Harris.
Brian, thank you very much. I want to bring in Darren Porcher, retired NYPD lieutenant and U.S. Army veteran, and Joe Cardinale, also a retired NYPD lieutenant, excuse me. Gentlemen, thank you for being with me today. You know, Darren, I'm going to come to you first just as a scene setter here with the backdrop as a leading candidate. And it looks like he's gaining some ground here with about 50% of known voters who would support him at this point, Mamdani, to want to do away with important parts of this police department, yet he will be at this funeral. Just set the scene for me.
To have Mamdani as the person that's elected to be the mayor of the city of New York would be catastrophic as it relates to public safety for us as the 8.5 million residents that reside here. When we look to the line of blue, we have tens and thousands of police officers that are in mourning for losing one of their brothers in blue, for valiantly stepping in front of a gunman in the protection of common citizens that didn't have the ability to provide the protection for themselves. So this is a travesty, to say the least, because an attack on a police officer is an attack on democracy. And the social contract specifically states government will afford us these protections, which Officer Islam provided, whereas he valiantly lost his life. As we move forward with Mamdani, I just think a socialist is not the right platform for us as New Yorkers, because we are experiencing an immense level of violent crime in the city of New York. And to put a person like Mamdani in office is going to take us back to the 70s, where crime runs rampant and we have a person that has a genuine misunderstanding of what public safety consists of.
A genuine misunderstanding, as you put it. Joe, I'll come right to you with this. As Mamdani is trying to walk back now, his defund police position, I mean, that's what he has said over and over. He says he is grateful for his own NYPD protection. Watch.
My life is sadly not the one that it was. There are far more threats, and with that comes precautions that I wish I didn't have to take, though they are also precautions that I am immensely grateful for, especially in the example of the NYPD detail that I have here in New York City.
Well, a lot of criticism on his words on social media. Here's one: rules for thee, but not for me. So, yeah, good luck protecting yourselves as he shuts down important pieces of the NYPD, but he's got a patrol on him. One user also called him a big ol' hypocrite. Joe.
They're correct, Harris. We've seen this before. Every politician that gets threats surround themselves with the very people they bash. And this is what this man is going to continue to do. He's going to continuously dismantle the first line of defense, not only in this city, but in this country. And this systematic abuse of this goes from him up to Albany, and from Albany back to the city. It's a controlling factor that we need to break away from. He's nothing but a political puppet for up in Albany, and now he's one of the puppeteers. All right, now he's out there telling people what he intends to do. I gave the stats before of 142 police officers since he's been in office up in Albany that have lost their lives. 5 to gunfire in New York City, 5 to gunfire, 1 to a vehicular assault, 10 to COVID, and 126 to 9/11 related deaths. He has not once reached out to any of those families in any capacity to console them, not once. And now all of a sudden he comes out of the woodwork and he comes in front of everybody on national television and tells them how proud he is of the NYPD and that he's going to do X, Y, and Z. But if you notice, Harris, he stops short of saying what he intends to do. But with the SRG, he's saying he doesn't like the capacity that they're using. That's the capacity they're trained for. So what is he saying when a riot breaks out the next time when school starts and they have all these riots? He's going to exactly. He's going to tell them
into a riot.
Back off.
That's what he's talking about. His friends are there, and we know the connection between Mahmoud Khalil. His father is a professor on that campus, of course. Look, I didn't mean to cut in too much, but I think you'll want to comment on this. Curtis Sliwa, who is the only Republican running in the race for mayor of New York, has just showed up, and he is known. He is known for his support of the men and women in blue, and we've been watching him get a very warm welcome. By the way, we have been told that former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, who's also running. We haven't seen much of him since Monday on this, but he's supposed to attend the funeral as well. So, Darren, I want to go back to you just to kind of get your response on this. Is a person, he started the Guardian Angels, which was a non-armed support service, if you will, of citizens to try to help stem the crime wave that has happened over the years.
I know Curtis Lewa personally, and I feel that he's a person that truly supports the social contract and the dynamic of public safety in the city of New York. Curtis Lewa is someone that did this for free when he was a guardian angel functioning in the subway system to keep us as common citizens safe. I think that he has the right agenda as it relates to public safety. And when we speak to Mamdani in this particular situation, Joe hit it right on the head. This is merely a photo op for him because he's had many opportunities in the past to impart his ideology in terms of a support for law enforcement, and it didn't happen. As we move forward, this is a tragic event as it relates to the loss of Officer Islam, who stood valiantly in the protection of individuals that are New Yorkers. I pay homage to him. I pay homage to the officers in blue that are standing by to salute him in the wake of his tragic passing.
Yeah, let's, Joe, if we can, talk a little bit about the loss of this officer. And I want to remind everybody, all of these police officers are standing outside of the mosque where that officer, Didarul Islam, is being remembered today. And the men are in worship now. The women were last hour. But he was a father. He was a husband. Your thoughts right now, Joe?
You know what, Harris, my friend Darren and I have been to many of these funerals over the course of our careers. All right, and people have to realize, and everybody should understand, that this officer did not lose his life. He gave his life, as do so many officers across this country. And it's moments like this that people should step back and see what police officers really do. And what's going to happen is the families receive a life sentence in this, no matter how you look at it. All right, I'm very good friends with Harry Ryman's family, and to this day, those 5 children that were left behind, it stays with them their whole lives because they're constantly reminded about the horror. You know, but there is one thing that's a consolation. This NYPD family of blue will be behind those families 100%, and they'll stay with them forever.
Joe and Darren, I know that you will be standing by. We'll be covering this as it begins, as the ceremony, and right now it is the viewing. Gentlemen, thank you for your service in the NYPD, for your leadership, and also for being with me today.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.